So I'm Casey Charles. I'm a retirement actuary at WTW. I was actually having a conversation with somebody recently, and I think my first IABA meeting was in 2003. So I have been a member of IABA or involved in IABA for almost 20 years. I know it doesn't seem that long, but it is. And I'm happy to be here presenting on personal branding with Anjani. Anjani?
Hi, I'm Anjanae. I work in client management at WTW. I've been a part of IABA for about 6 years now. So I joined back when I was in college, early in my college career, and it's been a very great resource for me. So glad to be here.
Thanks. And I'll go ahead and pull up the presentation now. Can you all see it? Sorry.
Yep, we can see it. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about my journey so far. I graduated from Ferris State University in actuarials with a degree in actuarial science. I've been a retirement actuary for the past 3 years, and I recently transitioned over to client management just recently in the last few weeks, and that role is mostly focused on building client relationships, understanding what our clients need, and providing those resources inside our company to them. So for this personal branding session, we wanted to first have this be very interactive. So I'm going to ask you guys to think of some personal brand or some brands that you can think of, shout them out, brands that you use in your everyday. Who has some ideas? AT&T, cool, okay. What are some positive connotations and negative connotations that you might have about AT&T? Or anybody can answer that too.
Yes, and you all can come off mute as well. You don't have to type in the chat, but that's your choice. I know for me, AT&T connection is terrible, but that's just me.
I was the one who typed AT&T, Lisa Bull here, and there's a lot of negative connections for sure. Positive would be sort of professional look, supposed comprehensive services. Negative would be poor follow through, confused services. A doesn't know what B is doing, as an example.
Yes.
And they're expensive, right? One of the more expensive.
Yeah. And then there's that.
What about another brand? Anybody else?
I thought of Walmart. That was like my first thing.
Yeah, what are positive and negatives for Walmart?
Walmart is very convenient. Prices are pretty low. Not right now with inflation and everything. But I would say those are positive things. Like they promote the family, like they service family people. Oh, somebody said Tesla. Oh yeah, that's true. But yeah, so I say that, but Walmart is also kind of iffy, you know, once they kind of destroy small businesses, kind of. So once the small business is out, now they kind of like jack up their prices and stuff like that. So kind of.
And there's also the quality of things you get from Walmart that can be kind of
iffy.
Hit or miss.
Yeah, it's not consistent. Yeah.
When I see Tesla, I think of like innovative, being at the forefront of innovation, and I think that's positive. Eco-friendly is a good one. When I think of, I also think of Elon Musk, which I don't know, can be negative sometimes depending on, you know, what he's putting on Twitter that day. So pros and cons. Okay, so on the next slide are some brands that we thought of that, I'm sorry, Daniel, were you about to say something? Okay, so on this slide are some brands that we thought of when we were thinking about brands that we know every day. So Walmart is up there, of course. Starbucks, I know I'm a fan, a fan of Starbucks. Instagram, I'm on Instagram constantly. So there are brands that we use every day in our day-to-day that we are familiar with, that we have opinions about. When we think about these brands, we think about the positives and the negatives. So when we think about Whole Foods, we think about there's healthy foods, there's really good options to choose from, very healthy options, but we also think, or I also think about it being more expensive and sometimes being not affordable. When I think about Instagram, right, it's a great way to connect and stay social, but I also think about that it's addictive and can be sort of dangerous for generations to come. So when we think about brands, we all have like different opinions of what's positive, what's negative about these brands, and your personal brand is going to be the same thing as you are growing in your career, as you're interacting with people. There's going to be, we want them to be mostly positive things, all positive things where possible, that people think of when they think about you and what you are as a brand. So on this slide, we have some people who have a personal brand. We know them for specific things and, you know, giving us specific content. So anybody on this slide pops out to you? What are they known for? What are some positive things and negative things that you think about when you think about when you see these people, like gut reactions?
I think Oprah is like omnipresent, right? And obviously her stamp on whatever it is, it typically is a positive thing for that particular business or individual. Like any person, there's, you know, we're complex, she's complex, so there's pros and cons. But that's one certainly jumps out as can be overwhelmingly positive and a boon. And obviously you've been very successful, overcome a lot to get to a pinnacle.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Who else? Who else? When you see their face, what comes to mind?
Somebody said Rock, The Rock. They said our kids love him as Maui.
Oh, neat.
I remember him, you know, from WWE, of course, you know, so.
My daughter also loves him as Maui. She loves Maui. I don't know that she realizes that The Rock is Maui. She loves Maui.
That would be a good question to ask. Somebody said Viola, excellent actress and great work ethic. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, good. Okay, so these are what we know these people for. They all have personal brands associated with them. And in your career, you're going to want to have the same thing. You're going to develop, you're going to grow, you're going to be meeting people, interacting, and you want to sort of give people an idea about what to expect from you as they are working with you, you know, for when you're in college, when you are in a career, when you're networking. You're always presenting a brand or an image of yourself. So what exactly does that mean? What is a personal brand? A personal brand is essentially how you show up every day. It's what people's opinion of you is, positive or negative, what you are going to bring to the table, what you represent. So you want to always make sure that your brand and what you're presenting is authentic to who you are, because how you present yourself is what people are going to assume that you're going to show up as every day. And so the way the best way to be successful in branding yourself is to always be true to yourself. So be different. Identify the things that are unique about you, what your unique perspectives are, and bring those to the table. At WTW, we talk about bringing your whole self to work and being able, having the space to bring your whole self to work. And essentially that means share your opinion, share your perspectives, share your goals and what you're trying to achieve. And people, and at least at WTW, give you the space to be you know, who you are and thrive in the environment that you're in, as long as you're bringing something to the table. Whereas people who, you know, might not have an opinion or might not be sharing perspective, your colleagues and people that you work with, your managers, might not necessarily know who you are and what your brand is. So be comfortable bringing those unique qualities about yourself to the table, and then also be consistent. So the person that we meet on day 1 or day 2 is also the person that we're going to be expected to meet on day 500. So throughout your career, you always want to be working hard. You always want to be a more team player. That's, you know, if that's who you are, if that's what branding you want to illustrate, you always want to be working towards being those same things. That's why you want to be authentic, because if you're, you know, displaying a persona, it'll be harder to keep up with. But just be yourself and be consistently yourself. And that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. That doesn't mean you can never have a bad day or anything like that. It really just means that people are going to expect you to always be what you present, usually on your first impression or a second impression, or just different things like that. So you want to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward, and you're consistently trying your best and trying to work together as a team. So you develop that brand of somebody who can be trusted and relied on and a valuable member to your company. Does that make sense? Any questions? Maybe we should pause there. Okay. So on the next slide are just some things that can be used to identify who you are, as who your brand is, what you want your brand to be. So you want to be a good team player. Working as a team is really important. Being able to work together with other colleagues and listen to different perspectives is going to be a really important part wherever you go. Whoever you work with, it's going to be really important. You want to be a go-to person for your colleagues. So you're not going to be expected to be an expert in everything, but you'll want to be an expert in your thing. So your role is something that people are going to want to be able to ask you about, be able to get information from you about. And once you develop that rapport, you become that go-to person. And that's something really valuable to everybody who's around you. You want to be a client relationship builder. So that essentially means when you're working in consulting, you want your clients to also be able to come to you and ask you those questions. You want to be a go-to person for your clients as well as your colleagues. And I know some of us might not work with clients, so you just also want to be a relationship builder with your colleagues and other people that you work with, managers, other people working in the company. All around, you want to have positive relationships with the people around you so they enjoy working with you. Be a leader. I'm sure many of us have heard that for a long time as we've been coming up. You know, just set an example and show what people coming up after you might be able to aspire to. Focus on client outcomes, focus clients on outcomes. So this is something related to consulting. You want to be able to help clients understand what the goal is that we're working towards, rather than the little nuanced details about things that could go wrong day to day. Essentially, you want to help them understand, like, this thing is happening, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. This is our plan. And even if something goes off the rails, this is the end goal. And then be able to handle difficult clients. Sometimes clients get frustrated. Sometimes issues are challenging, sort of just like we are human, our clients are humans as well. And this can go for other colleagues as well. It doesn't have to be clients. But be able to navigate those situations, just because your managers and your bosses are not going to hold you to how this, like the situation specifically. They're not going to say, oh, this thing happened and it's your fault. Not necessarily going to happen like that. It's more so going to be, this thing happened and this is how you reacted. This is how you handled the situation. And you created this outcome that was beneficial to the team and everybody around you, and blah, blah, blah. So how you handle the situation is always going to be more important than the situation itself. Does that make sense? Okay, good.
And so as we think about our personal brand, I think to Angeline's point, there's some things that are going to occur because of how you show up every day. And that's extremely important, right? It's important to be consistent. It's important to know how you show up, and that's what people will be saying about you. But there's also an aspect of our personal brand of what do we say about ourselves, right? Like, can we give that short introduction, that ability to have people know who we are, what we stand for, and what we do? I know oftentimes as actuaries, it's sort of like, well, what do you do? You're an actuary, what do you do? And so we've had to learn different ways of saying it. I think my way of saying it is that I help people quantify risk, especially the risk for financial resilience as in retirement, right? So I'm a retirement actuary, and people don't understand what that means, but it's about helping people quantify that risk for their retirement. And so a lot of what we will have to do and what you will have to do is be able to share your personal brand and tell your story in this elevator pitch. So who you are, what you do, what are your skills, what are your goals, sort of how do you put all of that together in something that's short, it's concise, it gives information, it shows that you're prepared, and it's persuasive. It's often said, what can you tell somebody in that elevator ride that lets them know who you are? But there's so many other ways that we interact with people, right? It could be at, you're at the grocery, you're at an event with your kids, you're with your friends, you just got a job, and they're like, what do you do? And these things oftentimes matter, and the more often you say it, right, the easier it becomes. And so, we have some examples here of different things that people may be able to, an example of what an elevator pitch might look like for some people. And we can go through those, but, I want to turn it over to you because it has been a quiet group so far. I'm interested in having people come off mute, come on the mic and just share some things, and let's go through an example together. So I want somebody to be brave to, and I can't see because I am sharing my screen, but just start talking about, let's go through together of how you might actually build your elevator speech.
Sure, no problem.
Good. So let's start then. So first, who are you?
My name is Keaton Yallery, and I'm currently a student. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I was accepted into both Boston University and Georgia State University to pursue a master's in actuarial science. I completed my bachelor's in actuarial science from the University of the West Indies. I'm also pursuing the financial mathematics examination coming this August, and I love everything technical. So anything to do with Excel, SQL, Power BI, you name it, I just love to do technical things. So that's my short pitch.
Good. That was a great example, Keaton. You said who you were, you said where you were, and with respect to your schooling, what's coming up next, and then some of the things that you like. So I thought that was actually a really good example. I don't have much feedback for you. I don't know if Anjali, if you have any feedback for Keaton, but I thought that was a good job.
Yeah, I agree. That was a good job. I got a good idea about who you are, what you're trying to do. So it was good.
Good. If there's anything I would add, and I think if you're a student looking for a job, it's probably adding something like that. Like, and I'm looking for an actuarial role, but it depends on the audience of who you're talking to. So if you're talking to an employer or potential employer, then you might add what you want. But if you're just talking in general to somebody about what you do, I think you did a great job. Anybody else? Excuse me. Anybody else wants some? Go.
Don't be shy. We want to hear your quick little elevator pitches if you could. I know that there are some people in here that are looking or practicing, getting a job or internship or anything. So I know you develop your elevator pitch or you need to. So this is the time to practice it and get some feedback on it. So if anybody's interested in showing your elevator pitch, then please do so. Don't be nervous or shy.
And we can work on it together. Like if you have some ideas, but you're just not sure exactly how you're gonna pull it all together, we can work on it. So anybody else wants to go?
You can always pick somebody.
Okay, let's pick somebody. Morgan, since you have a better sense of the people on the call, who do you recommend?
I would recommend Therese, personally. Sorry, Therese. If you
I had a feeling you were going to.
yes.
Therese, are you game?
Sure, no problem. My name is Therese Conliffe. I am from the Bahamas. Presently, I am an educator. I teach mathematics to junior high school students. I am a recent graduate from Florida State University, 2019. I pursued my master's degree in financial mathematics, the actuarial science track. I have already completed all of my VEE requirements. I've also completed and passed the exam P and FM, presently studying for the IFM. My long-term goal is to actually become a retirement actuary, but at present I am open to any position that is available.
Yes.
Good, yeah. Well done, Therese. I thought you did a really good job of stating where you are now. You know, you focused in on your actuarial exams, which is a key component when you're getting and looking for a job within the actuarial profession, and stating your goals of saying what you want. This is what you want, but this is what you're open to now. So I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
Angela, any feedback?
I agree. I thought it was good as well. I think maybe you can throw in there like skills that you have. Doesn't necessarily have to be technical skills. You could say like, I enjoy working as a team, or I have experience in Excel, or I enjoy teaching because you have that experience. So you can sprinkle that in there a little bit. I don't think you have to. In the actuarial world, I think when you say that you have taken P and FM, like, okay, we know that there's a level of technical ability that you have to get those exams. But I think you can also throw a little bit in there skills wise.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Therese and Geetan. I think the hardest part sometimes is the first time you have to say it out loud, because it always sounds good in your head, right? But that first time you say it out loud, the next time it becomes much easier, right? I once heard somebody talk about comedians and how they work and how they actually try jokes out. And every time they say the joke, they get what resonates. And so then by the time we hear them on the stage, it sounds like they're doing it for the first time, but they've been practicing often to make sure it flows naturally. And
Right.
it's something that it's the same way, right? Like the more you say it out loud to other people and you get the reaction, the more that you're able to tweak it so that it just sounds like this natural thing of this is who I am and this is what I do and this is what I want.
Okay, so and in essence, you're saying that we probably should write it on paper first and then practice it out loud.
If that's what works for you, like there's some people who need to write things out
Okay,
and then practice it out loud. But I don't, it's short enough that you don't necessarily need to write it out.
Okay.
But think about what you want to say and say it out loud. See how it sounds, say it again. Talk to, next time you talk to someone, it's like, hey, I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I want. See how it feels to them, see how it feels to you saying out loud. If it feels unnatural to you, then you're not going to be comfortable saying it. So you
Okay.
have to get it to the point where it feels natural to you. And it may
Understood.
be, it's too long, you need to make it shorter, it's too short, you feel like you didn't get enough information. And so there's a back and forth there.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I noticed about both that was really good is that I think the hardest part is sometimes the confidence. Like speaking loudly, not sort of like going into your shell and being like whispering. But I thought you both had that really good. So I feel like that's the hard part, or at least that's the hard part for me, getting the confidence to like walk up to somebody and, speak loudly and say, say my elevator pitch, get started with it. So I think you guys also had that really good. That was something I wanted to add.
Good. So I'm gonna move on, and as there's one more person who wants to try. Okay. So we do have some examples here that you can, you would have access to the deck. And so you can go through and take a look at it. But I think, the examples we got from Tyrus and Keaton were good today. We wanted to talk about social media as well. I feel like social media has become this huge thing that is part of how we present in our brand. Yes, some employers do go on and look at your social media. However, I think, we have to be authentic in how we live our lives and understand that there are different social media platforms for different aspects of your life. So for example, starting with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional site. And I would recommend that, the pictures that you use on LinkedIn, should be professional. The posts that you put should be professional. The things that, it's really a professional interest, and that's why we use LinkedIn. I think, when we get to things like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they're a lot more social in what they're used for. And so you should feel comfortable to put social things on those platforms, recognizing that, of course, we talk about a consistency, and that consistency should be throughout your entire life. And so if there's something that you're going to put on Facebook that you wouldn't want to your employer to see, you need to be thoughtful about whether or not you should put it on Facebook. Right. And I think once you're thoughtful about it, you can make the decision that, what, this is my opinion and I want to put it on Facebook and I'm comfortable with it. And if somebody in work asks me about it, I'm able to defend my opinion. That's your personal choice. Right. But be aware that there are people looking at your Facebook, and you shouldn't be surprised if something you put on Facebook becomes a conversation at a later point. Oftentimes things that I put on Facebook, nobody in work has ever asked me. I actually put things that I want people to come back and say, hey, I saw you posted this, but nobody actually has ever come back and asked me about it. But it could happen, right? Like Instagram, Facebook. I don't have TikTok, but I put my Instagram pictures out there, I go traveling, and nobody comes back and says, oh, I saw you, So it's not as often as you think, because but you should be aware it could happen. I think Twitter is in this space between professional and social, since people use it for both professional and social. I have seen people do things like have two different Twitter accounts. One that's more like a professional account where they put work-related things and they like work things, and they, and then one that's more social. Again, that's your choice, but just be aware with social media. Oftentimes, when you put it out there, it's out there for life. We've seen so many instances of people who are dealing with stuff now based on something they posted 5-10 years ago, right? And it's, 10-15 years when they were now coming up, they posted something. Now that they've been it, it's like, oh, I remember this post you said. And so it doesn't always go away just because you've deleted it from your own feed if somebody else has it, I don't do screen captures that often, but I know there's some people who will do a screen capture of something somebody said and bring it back up later. So just be aware of things like that. Does anybody have any specific questions about social media use?
Somebody did direct message me a question about the social media. I think they did it by mistake. But they did ask Sorry, because it went away. How important is it to have LinkedIn?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You need to, I think anybody right now who is looking for a job, it is important that you have a LinkedIn account. You know, I think LinkedIn has just become that standard right now that people go on and look at your LinkedIn to see what's out there. The amount of detail you have on LinkedIn is up to you. I've seen people with very, very little. But I think you need to have a LinkedIn account, and I would say you want to have a professional looking picture. It doesn't have to actually be a professional picture. It could be something you take on your phone. It could be a selfie, but it should be professional looking, right? So not too much stuff going on in the background. It can be look like a cutout. Like I've seen people where it looks like they cut themselves out, but it's half person next to them. Like you want something that looks like a good picture, but you need to have a LinkedIn account. I did see another question. Should we keep names on social media as original legal names? You know, again, I think that's a personal choice. On LinkedIn, yes. I think on LinkedIn, you should have your name. I mean, it could be your legal name. It could be the name you go by, right? So like if your name is, your legal name might be Joseph, but you go by Joe, and that's okay. Like it doesn't have to be a legal name, but it has to be an official name or something that you go by. I think on the other social media platforms, again, I think it's a personal choice. You want to make sure you choose a name that you're okay with somebody asking about. Like I had a friend who's can't remember what name was, something like Pink Flowers or something like, it wasn't even a bad name. It was just, but then, or actually I think it was her email address or something with like Pinky Flowers or something like that. But when people started to email her because it was mailing her for because she was recruiting, it like actually became weird, right? Like, why am I emailing Pinky Flowers? Why am I not just emailing somebody's name? So I think you need to be email. Definitely, you'd want to have a name that people would use. I think the rest of social media, again, it's a choice. I think of it like this on Twitter. If somebody's going to retweet you from work, what would you want them to retweet? But the other social media platforms, I think it's your personal choice. I don't know, Anthony, if you have a different perspective there.
Yeah, I think that it depends on what you're posting as well. Like if you know that you're posting just crazy, like I don't know, binge drinking for 5 days straight, and you're like posting everything and like just craziness on your social media, I don't know, maybe not use your first name, just because like if it's easily Googleable, like any company that you're going to work for is probably going to Google you. So if you don't want that to come up as your brand, I wouldn't maybe use your first name. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I think because you still want to authentically be yourself, and who you are on your off time is completely your right to be that. But if an employer saw that, would they think that you're unreliable? Would they think that you're unprofessional? All that kind of stuff. So I think if you're using your first name and you're doing something that you wouldn't want your employer to see, maybe just not use your first name, or maybe make it private. You know, like your even if it is your first name, like your Instagram can be private, your Facebook can be private. Or even specific posts, right, can be private to people who are your friends that can only see it. But if you're attaching your first name to something, or your legal name, make sure that you be okay if your employer saw it, I think. And I think that like my legal name is attached to like my family pictures, our vacations, like Kizia was saying, like I'm a human being outside of work. I have, you know, other stuff going on, and I'm fine with my employer seeing that. But just the craziness, I don't know, probably make that private.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. That was something that I learned when I was applying to jobs myself. You have to, my name is, you know, so it's a little crazy. I had to turn off, you can go into your settings and you can change it so that you're not Googleable. Like it's not that easy to find certain social media pages, but I don't have anything crazy on there. I just didn't want my personal stuff to be out there or that easy to find. But yeah, I definitely think if you're doing some crazy things, yeah, or posting crazy things, then I would just probably stick with maybe a nickname or something like that. So I hope that answered your question, Ruby. I think you said like, yep, you did. Yep. So yeah, yep.
Good.
Yeah.
And so then want to talk about just, obtaining feedback and getting references. And so, I think starting with the middle with just be specific. If you're going to ask somebody for something, I think you want to be really clear about what the ask is, and what it's going to be used for. Like oftentimes people may not mind doing a reference for you or putting together some feedback for you, but they just want to understand what it is if they're going to spend the time to do it, to understand what they're doing it for. I am a fan of, if somebody's asking me to be a reference, especially, or for feedback, to highlight some of the things that we worked on together so that it's easier for me to say, okay, yes, I remember this and that. So, I think it's on you as the person who's asking to sort of keep track of the things that, like, hey, Anjali, remember when we worked on putting together the personal branding session? Could you give me some feedback on that? Or I want a reference or something, like, you know what I mean? So giving that specific request and then keeping track of the things that you worked on with somebody. I think that's important when you're asking for references and feedback, right? So this is both feedback and references. We say ask often. I think that's especially true for feedback, that you want to get constant feedback so you understand what you're working on, what you're doing well, and what things that you still need to work on. It's also going to help with that personal brand, right? So you help you better understand how people perceive you and what they think of you how they think when they think of you. It's important to think about how you react to feedback, and ensure that you keep an open space. So even if you get feedback, if you didn't want to receive, I think it's important to keep it open. It is okay to ask for additional information, right? So somebody gives you feedback that you think might be inaccurate or wrong, you can ask for more information. So give me an example of a time when I did this thing that you asked me, that you said I did, right? You can do that, but you don't want to become so closed off, because that might prevent somebody from giving you feedback again in the future. And then you may not be getting the information that you need to improve. An important thing, and you think, the IABA is a good example of an opportunity you may have, is to volunteer. The more that when you volunteer, you get skills outside of some of the technical skills that you may get from studying and passing exams and doing that. But it also creates opportunities for you to interact with people who may later on be somebody you can ask for feedback, or somebody who can be a reference for you. And so, I think volunteering is, there's the altruistic part of it, which is extremely important. But I think there's also the opportunity to network and to get some of that feedback. And then finally, when we think about getting that feedback and asking for references and such, as you, excuse me, as you get that feedback, it's important to continue to grow and to evolve, right? And so as things are identified, the things that you maybe need to work on, that you actually spend the time to figure out what you need to work on to see how you can improve your brand. Or if you get a reference or something, things that you're doing really well, thank you. It's important to say, okay, this is what I'm doing well. Let's continue to strengthen that and see how I can continue to do that better, right? And so sometimes we might get references or feedback, and it's like, oh, everything sounds good, so there's nothing I need to do, but there's still work we can do on ourselves to improve. Angela, anything else you wanted to add here?
No, I don't have anything.
Good. And so, sort of like bringing it all together. When we think about, your personal brand, and, even as we think about, social media, as we think about how we get feedback and references, there's really these 5 things, right? Like, what are your strengths? And then what are your weaknesses? What are your values? And how do you think about your values? What are your passions, right? Because you may be values. What are the things that you're passionate about? And how can you bring that into who you are and what your brand is? And then finally, what is your purpose? I think it's really important as we think about of the jobs we may have in life, the opportunities we have to volunteer, or even how we interact with certain organizations and stuff. Like, what is their purpose and what is our purpose, and how do we bring it all together to really have this holistic view of who we are and what our brand is. And we do have on these 5 points, so you will get a copy of the append of the deck from the materials. We have more information on each of these 5 points and how you can build these together to help with your personal brand and really determine who you are and who people see and how you can influence what people say about you. And so with that, we wanted to open up with just any broader questions. If there's something that we covered that you wanted to have more information on, or something that we didn't cover that you wanted to ask a question about.
I had a question. Just for clarity's sake, I wear the recruiter hat. I'm with a search firm, an actuarial search firm. Do you perceive different generations can approach this concept of personal branding either more easily or perhaps with more difficulty?
That's a really good question. You know, I don't know if it's ease or difficulty. I think it's just there are differences in how it's done and different sources. And I think the pandemic has definitely highlighted that, right? I think some of us from generations before, we are very much an in-person type interaction. And so we think, when we think about personal brand, we're very conscious of how we physically show up in an office, how we physically show up in meetings, how we interact with people. I think the generations coming up now and how we all will need to be following the pandemic, it's much more virtual, right? Like social media has now a bigger influence on who we are because now everything is virtual. Our emails, how we can communicate with people on emails and IM. I think that's something that we have to better figure out. And I think the generations coming in will have, they're way ahead of us on that, right? Like, because they've spent more time in a virtual world and on social media and on the internet than many of us have. You know, I think I still have a physical business card. You know what I mean? It's just certain things like that. Like when we thought about a branding, it'd be like, you have your card that you gave to somebody like in person. And so I think it's going to be learning both ways. Like we are going to have to learn how to be more digital and more virtual. But I think that we are still social beings. And so I think there's still work to be done on how to be present physically, right? Like think about how we show up to work every day. Think about how we show up to meetings. Think about, you know, there are all these aspects that come into it. So I don't know if one is easier or harder. I think it's just different. I don't know, Angelina, if there's anything else. So I will admit, Angelina and I came out at start working at different times. So she has a younger perspective than I have.
I think from my perspective, like the current generations, my generation and those coming after me are more like vocal about things that they believe in, things that are important to them than previous generations. Like I think before, our work environment was more a culture of like you know, you have to work hard earlier in your career, and as you grow and you might not have to work as hard, you can vacation a little more and all those kind of things. And I think that nobody liked it. Like everybody's like, you know, yeah, I am younger and I understand that I have to work hard, but I think the current generations are like, no, like I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna have work-life balance. I'm gonna, you know, travel and all these things. So I think like I don't think demand's a good word, but I'm not sure how to phrase it, but just like the things that we need from our work environments, the younger generations are a little bit more apt to be vocal about, which I think has changed the work environment for the better and made it, you have this space, or I think we all now in work environment have the space to make sure we're getting the things that we need from work, like in our, you know, in the PTO that we get, in benefits, and having an inclusive culture, having a say in all those things. and tailoring it to the things that we need from work in our day-to-day, since we just spend so much, you're going to spend the majority of your life working. So making sure that fits has been, I feel like, a theme of the later generations.
Thanks, Anjani. Thank you for the question, Lisa. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on the call today. As mentioned, as Morgan mentioned, you will get a copy of the presentation, and there are some slides in the appendix that we did not go into that has a lot more detail and things that you can think about as you work on your elevated speech. If there's nothing else you take from us today, I will have Anjali share her thoughts, but my thought is it really is important to be consistent. We want people to see us as we are, but we need to be as who we are. So we have to be authentic and we have to be consistent. And then the other thing is you also means that like a lot of times you have to practice, right? Like practice and learn and refine, and practice and learn and refine. Anjani, any closing words?
I think for me, my biggest takeaway in developing my brand has definitely been confidence, knowing what I don't know and being okay with saying the things that I don't know. Sort of being open, being authentic, asking questions, being vulnerable. And I think my brand develops into be like this person who's always raising her hand, or this person who always wants to do these different things. And then I have become somebody that people come to and say, hey, do you want to do this? Can you help with that? And it's given me a lot of opportunities. So be confident enough to raise your hand and say, I know this, I want to help. And also be confident enough to say, I don't know this, but I want to learn. I think that's been really impactful for my career so far.
Good.
Yeah. Well, that is amazing. And I think just to wrap it up, thank you so much both for such a great presentation. And I think to kind of piggyback off of that last thought, and to sum up all of our boot camp modules, you need confidence. Work on your confidence, and you can do anything. And ask questions. We talked about resume reviews, like I said, mock interviews. We went over what an actuary actually does. We went over technical skills. We went in and out of different things that an actuary really needs to be successful. And you all have gotten you all were in the passenger seat to that, so I'm just thankful for you all for being on this call. And to just remember, or the biggest takeaways from this boot camp is just to work on yourself, like they said, remain confident, remain consistent, and just be yourself, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I joined IABA, was to connect with other Black people or people that or allies want to help people of color further their lives. And the best way to further anybody's life is through finance and education. And this is the best way for me to kind of connect and provide you all with that opportunities and resources. So overall, I'm just very thankful for you all. Thank you so much. I am going to be sending a lot of emails in the next couple of days to our students. We want to thank WTW for coming and presenting, and I got a great glimpse of what you all do as well and how you all give back. So it's just very appreciative. So just be on the lookout, everyone, for all of the emails that I'll be sending. I'll be sending out the recording link. I'll be sending out a little bit more information on WTW, just in case you all want to learn more about the services that they offer and the organization overall. And I will be sharing, annual meeting information, People that are interested in attending the annual meeting, please reach out to me. There is an opportunity for sponsorship and things like that. So please reach out if you are interested in attending this year's session. It will be in New Orleans, Louisiana, August 11th through the 13th. So yeah, so I just wanted to get that information out. And I believe that is it. I am just, like I said, I'm just grateful, and this has been such a great experience for me to host all these boot camps for you, starting since February to May now. So I am happy with the growth and the development. And if you all have any more questions, please reach out to me at my email, m.coven@blackactuaries.org. And yes, you can find more information on blackactuaries.org as well about the next year's bootcamp. So I believe that is all I have for you all today. Like I said, stay blessed, stay safe. COVID is real and so much. So just please stay safe, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Bye.